Sam, and of course this is Jill from the Red Hook Initiative. So Jill, for members of our community who aren't familiar, in 2 minutes, we just saw all these pitches. In 2 minutes, can you tell us about your initiative?
Sure. The Red Hook Initiative is a community-based organization just a few blocks away at Hicks and West 9th Street. We are focused primarily on serving residents of Red Hook, and many of you may have been here sampling restaurants and coffee shops, but many of you might not know that Red Hook is actually home to the second largest public housing development in New York State. It's about 10,000 people who are living there, living near or below the poverty line, and so RHI has been in the community for 14 years, meeting that need and focusing primarily on serving youth. We start working with them at middle school and provide long-term ongoing support until age 24 to make sure that they have the opportunities that they need to be able to graduate from high school and go on to employment or to college and really be able to determine their own path for themselves with their future.
Awesome. And this is actually my first time in Red Hook. Are you from here?
I'm not. I actually grew up between Rochester and Buffalo, where there are far more cows in cornfields than there are people, so
Cow country.
Not from New York, yes.
But you've been here for a long time now. How did this initiative get started, and how did you kind of come to be the one that started it?
Yeah, so I tell people that I'm an accidental founder. I was a health educator at Long Island College Hospital, which is a few miles away in downtown Brooklyn, and I did a lot of outreach and education to women in a women's health education, and I felt like there was a better model to reach people talking about health. And I said, wouldn't it be better if people from the community can provide that education to each other? And so I applied for a grant under the hospital. I left the hospital to work with teenagers and youth because they're way more exciting than adults, in my opinion. And I got a phone call a few months later from the hospital, and they said, we have a $50,000 check sitting here. We're not going to send it back, and none of us are going to go start a program in Red Hook. So I thought that it would just be a year-long program that I would go there. I went there at night and on the weekend, and I thought it would be over in a year. And now it's 14 years later, and we're no longer focused on women's health. It is focused on youth and development and really creating opportunities for residents of public housing in this neighborhood.
So you ended up sticking around a little bit longer than expected.
Yes.
Maybe that'll be TechCrunch too. We'll have to see. But in hearing you speak and in reading about the Red Hook Initiative, one thing that struck me was that I think over 90% of your staff is from Red Hook. So they're based locally, they're from the area, and that you have this really tight tie with the public housing community. And I think there's an interesting story as to how you ended up in your current office space. Do you want to share that?
Sure. So the original idea was that there was something wrong with a model where I worked at a local hospital and would come out to this community to be the expert. I said the people who live here are the ones who know what is needed to create social change. And so the original idea, in year one, I hired 10 women who lived in public housing and I trained them. And while our model has changed many times over 14 years, that original idea that it is the people who live in a community who can create the change that is necessary for that community has never gone away. So last year, we had 93% of our staff. Many of them are actually teenagers and young adults who are given a job year-round to be able to do things to improve their neighborhood. They live here, and that model really came to a test in the end of 2008. We were in donated space, and anyone who's been in New York for very long would realize that free space in New York City doesn't last long.
I think all the startups can attest to that.
Yes. And so finally someone said, hey, why are they not paying rent? And we had to move out. And so the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, when there was an economic crash, we also found ourselves homeless and needing to raise money to renovate an empty warehouse in the middle of the neighborhood. And in that moment, we needed $400,000, which at that time was unfathomable for us.
Cool.
And the residents of public housing raised $10,000. So the median family income in public housing in Red Hook is around $15,000 a year. And to watch them, selling pins and T-shirts or asking their teachers or family members to contribute to this was really a moving experience, and really testament to why we are still here in Red Hook today.
Yeah, I saw they made these great, was it hope pins?
Hope pins.
Yeah, I saw, maybe I can get one of those.
Yes,
later.
I'll find you one.
So right now I live in San Francisco, and we see a lot of the neighborhoods changing, and it's a big discussion there, as I think it is here. Coming in, I'm sure everyone sees IKEA, of course, TechCrunch is here, as well as a lot of artisanal coffee shops and things coming in. People may think, oh, well, Red Hook has changed. But what have you seen in the past decade with your community? What has changed?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people know that I work in Red Hook, and they say exactly that. Oh, it's changed so much, and it depends on where you are in Red Hook and whether or not it has changed. So I think in public housing, sadly, things have not changed. In fact, anyone who's aware of public housing and the funding challenges that are there, conditions actually continue to deteriorate. When Sandy hit in 2012, the Red Hook houses had no light, heat, power for about 3 weeks, and some of those buildings are still on temporary boilers.
Still from back
almost
then.
4 years later, they're temporary. And so I think a lot of the gentrification and the change that has happened in the surrounding neighborhood, if there isn't a way for people who live there to connect, to make that bridge, to feel like I should walk 3 or 4 blocks over because there's something there for me, that hasn't necessarily happened. And so there is still a very dense portion of this neighborhood that has not yet changed as a result of what's happening along the waterfront.
Yeah, and I think one area that might be of particular interest to our audience is internet access. It's something that everyone here usually has at least 2, if not more. If you're wearing a watch and your phone, a lot of devices connected. And it's my understanding that public housing does not have connectivity, and that's something that you guys have some programs to address.
Yes. So yes, there is. If you go into public housing, they do not have internet access. We have a program called Red Hook Wi-Fi. Some of you, if you've been in the neighborhood, might have found it. Have one of our young people right here in the front. And this program was actually designed by, the original idea came from Tony Schloss, who's our director of technology, who lives here in the neighborhood, and partnered up with some researchers and really said, what could we provide from an internet standpoint? What if there was free Wi-Fi in this community? Many people have some kind of a smartphone, but they don't have a data plan that just costs too much. And so we now have a program, Red Hook Wi-Fi. We have 15 hotspots in the neighborhood that will be doubling within the next year. And we train young adults who are from the neighborhood, and they are the ones who are building this mesh network. They're learning the tech skills, they're creating the content for that network. So whether it's they're managing the social media or designing videos, they're interacting with local businesses to get content on the Wi-Fi network that talks about what's here. And that has really become people from the community now have access. One of our digital stewards tells the story of coming home one night and he saw people sitting on the sidewalk at 10:30 at night in the dark, and he's like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we're accessing free Wi-Fi. And he felt really proud that he had created that network. And I think it's just watching what can happen when young people are the ones creating that and making that accessible. They're bringing it to their community, and we're in conversations now with the mayor's office and with NYCHA to figure out how to bring Red Hook Wi-Fi into public housing.
Awesome, and it's very inspiring, and I'm sure the students that you work with, they gain so many skills. Their community now has access to the internet, but what then? So now they have the internet, and they just watch a lot of YouTube. Like, what happens after that?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the room where I need to tell people that you need the internet in order to live, but you need the internet in order to live. So for young people who are in school, Homework assignments are now, they're emailed, they're things that are, they have to be able to get online if they're going to succeed in school, or if you're going to apply to college, or if you're going to even apply for a job. We have people heading out with a paper resume and they come back, oh, they told me I have to apply online. And so really it's being able to connect to your neighborhood, it's knowing what's going on, but it's also being able to live and to get an education and get a job. That's necessary, especially when you're looking at people who are trying to break a cycle of poverty and have access to things that everyone else has.
Yeah, and I think when you hear the tech community talk about increasing access, one of the major things is learning to code. And there are all these schools, and I myself actually just went through a program to do that. But it sounds like there are some more fundamental things that the internet provides that maybe we as a community have a tendency to overlook. What are your thoughts on just such an intense focus on this coding aspect?
So I will say that we have 6th graders at RHI who are coding. It's way over my head. They try to explain it to me. I don't get it, but they love it. But they're also, through our youth development programs, we're saying there are so many different ways that you can use technology. It doesn't have to be coding. One of our traditional programs is that we trained teenagers to be peer health educators and to teach other teens about reproductive health and HIV/AIDS and pregnancy prevention, and they used to hand out paper flyers and get everyone to come to RHI to sit in a room in a circle. And a few years ago, they said, we're not going to do it that way anymore. We're going to do it through Facebook and through text message and through Instagram accounts. And suddenly, the number of young people who they're reaching with their peer-to-peer messages has quadrupled just in the same amount of time because of being able to use technology. And so I think we're really looking at the work that we have done and the change that we're trying to create, and technology weaves through all of that.
Yeah, and so it's like social organizing, there's job application, there's education. The internet touches everything now. And I don't think we heard the statistic, but I think you guys, is it true that you're covering almost 70, or you provide access to almost 70% of the Red Hook public housing community? You provide internet.
Just based on the layout of the community in the streets surrounding public housing, yes, internet. The Red Hook Wi-Fi is accessible from about 70% of the neighborhood, and we're working to really bring that all the way into public housing, and that just involves getting permission from the city of what we can install where.
Well, we at TechCrunch are very supportive of what you guys are doing here. We really loved having you, and a number of our volunteers, if you guys have seen them in the green t-shirts, are actually from the initiative, so hopefully they got a little chance to see the conference. But our own staff decided to take it upon themselves to do something to contribute to RHI, and I think we have a photo, if we can cue that up. This is our senior editor, Jonathan Schieber. If you'll notice, he has a very pronounced beard. Something that a number of us have wanted to get rid of for some time. I think some of you may agree. And so we're actually going to shave John's beard if we raise the money for Red Hook. So if you look on TechCrunch's Twitter right now and check out the post online, there is a link in the post to a WeFunder page where we're raising money to shave John's beard. You can also donate to Red Hook directly from the post. And tomorrow, if you guys are on site, we're actually going to do it live. We're using a local barber from Red Hook. It's going to be out in Startup Alley on TechCrunch TV. And I'm told that we released this about an hour ago just to our staff. And right now we're about $400. So we'd love you guys to help us in raising $1,000 for the organization.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And this is just a very lighthearted way of hopefully raising some awareness and having some fun and shining light on Red Hook. But to sort of wrap up, what should the tech community be doing?
First of all, thank you. That's amazing. If that were the easiest way to raise our $3 million budget every year, I would find a way to grow a beard and then shave it. I think I think oftentimes people feel like I'm in tech, I don't know about youth development, or I don't know the nonprofit world, and I think there's so much that can be done. And one, it's what just happened, right? Donate. Find something that you care about, and any nonprofit is probably struggling, and a little bit of money can go a really long way because they have to be so resourceful. But secondly, I think thinking about your own experience, donating time, whether it's joining a board or getting involved. So many times when you're doing startup work, you're thinking about technology or development, your real inspiration and change comes when you're not doing what you do every day. And so talking to different people and being in different environments, that I think really creates creative space, which is when people get ideas and growth happens. And the final thing I would say is we have, so many young people who have worked with us, and I think knowing that there's a growing industry in tech, and that's something that they're interested in, and many of our young people who've gotten full-time jobs who have not gone to college, it really, there's something there that they're interested in and feeling like they have a pathway, and knowing that as people think about diversity in the tech sector, being able to really make connections into communities like Red Hook and saying, hey, let's create an opportunity. Let's not just go to the same circles where we always go to post our entry-level positions. How can we make relationships to bring in people with fresh ideas, with different perspective? That's both helping community, it's helping the individual, it's helping the nonprofit world, and I think is ultimately helping the tech sector and whatever work individuals are doing to make a cutting-edge company.
Excellent. Well, great advice. Donating money, of course, please. Donating time, little things like we're doing, but actually getting in there, mentoring, coaching, and of course, companies can do a better job of hiring and reaching outside of the standard scope. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jill.
Thank you.
This was great, and you guys should check out the post and head over to WeFunder. Thank you.
Thanks.